All right, what is up, my friends? I'm Professor Jim, and I'm here to introduce you all to the world of Strixhaven. And I will be going over all of the cards in this. I can't do it the whole time, folks. I really can't. I'm sorry. Strixhaven, School of Mages complete set review. If you're new here, if it's your first time on my set reviews, let me go over it for you. We do an entire set review. We do every single card. That's right, every card in the entire set will be gone over for limited and constructed. Some cards are obviously not meant for constructed, so we'll gloss over those as far as constructed goes and talk about limited. And then some cards are really important. We have our best in show we do for each color. And we're doing this a little bit differently this time. So Strixhaven, of course, is the school set. Basically, it's kind of like if the world of Harry Potter met the world of Ravnica. There are 5 schools, enemy color pairs, kind of like guilds. And we're going to be doing...
Good morning, afternoon, or evening, Jim and chat. Hope everyone is having an amazing Easter.
Thanks, Gigi. Thanks for the resub. Thanks for the bits. And we're going to be doing each color as usual. However, I'm breaking up the multicolored section into all 5 schools. And then I'm also doing a separate section for lessons, which we're starting with today, because this is a new mechanic called Learn. And whenever the Learn mechanic goes off, you get to go into your sideboard and get a lesson. And it's really impossible to contextualize how the Learn cards work without first seeing the lesson cards. Because lesson cards are very, very unique. They're sort of like half a magic card, however weird as that sounds, which is why we're going over those first. I think it's really important to contextualize. So we're doing lessons, we're doing all 5 colors, then all 5 schools, and then we're going to do our colorless cards at the end as well. Anything you miss, it'll be on YouTube. VD, thanks for the resub, appreciate that. Or new sub. So anything you miss will be on YouTube, of course. Definitely check that out as well. And let's get started here. So, again, I should probably actually load up a Learn card just to show the basics here. We can understand this mechanics. The mechanic is quite interesting. The Learn mechanic, which, we'll start here. Real fast. So the Learn mechanic is you may reveal a lesson card you own from outside the game and put it into your hand. Or you can discard a card to draw a card. Okay? So the Learn mechanic basically says, a card will say, if this dies, learn, or just learn, or when it comes into play, learn. So you get to go into your sideboard and fish out a card. That's a lesson card. Okay? Now, it's important to note that the lesson cards, it's not like drawing a card, because these cards are sort of like less than half a card. We'll just look at them. We'll just start looking at the lessons. And all the Mystic Archives are on my Cool Stuff article from last week. So I will not be doing the Mystic Archives today. So let's look at our first lesson here. It's Environmental Sciences, 2 colorless for a sorcery lesson. Search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it in your hand, then shuffle. You gain 2 life. So right off the bat, we can see this card is not a good magic card, right? Typically, this effect costs 1 green, and it's often unplayable unless there's some sort of extra real bonus to it, like a Tune with Aether or something like that. So right off the bat, you would never put this card in your deck. But the thing is, you don't have to. So the lesson cards, it's kind of similar to Companion in that you need to think about it in a different way than just being an actual card. The card Gigantha, the Wellspring, the red-green 5-mana Companion, is not a very good magic card. You'd never put it in your deck just as a magic card. However, it sees a lot of play in Standard, Pioneer, Historic, because the reality is that getting a free card and having it just kind of come out of nothingness into a card is a very powerful effect. Even 8 mana split up for 3 and 5 is, for a 5/5, is worth it in some decks like Tron or even Sacrifice decks. So it's important to contextualize that with these lessons. That's why we're doing these first. This card is not good as a magic card. But it's not a magic card, it's a lesson. It's a free piece of material we're getting from our sideboard. Now, the cost there, of course, is sideboard space. Cost sideboard slot. So in Limited or in Best of 1, that's not a problem at all. It's just a free resource. In Constructed Best of 3, that is a resource. So sideboard cards are not, slots are not free. So the lesson's got to be good. So what do we got here? We have 2 mana for a Lay of a Land, right? Search for a basic land, gains you life. Probably not super playable. The colorless lessons are also all fighting with each other for space because you can play them in any deck. Definitely a solid limited card here as far as mana fixing goes. Say you play that 2-drop and you learn, you get this card, you pay 2, you get a land. That is card advantage. It may be inefficient, but it is card advantage. So kind of a reasonable card here. Probably a good limited fixer. Probably won't see play constructed. But if there are learn cards that can, are cheap enough where you can use as a mana fixer, it's possible, but probably more of a draft card for sure. Our next card is Expanded Anatomy. 3 mana for a lesson, sorcery. They're all sorceries. Put 2 possible counters on target creature. It gains vigilance till end of turn. So again, a card that is not worth 3 mana, but as a free card, as a lesson, sort of like a reverse cantrip. This is a pretty good limited card, honestly. You learn, and then you get to augment your creature later on. It's sort of like an ability. So you have that 2-drop that learns. Imagine if it had like pay 3 and put 2 counters on this, like a kicker ability or something like that. That's pretty good, So pretty solid limited card here. Obviously, some decks are going to care more about counters than other. One also really important thing about lessons is they're sorceries. And one of the other main mechanics in the set is Magecraft, which triggers off of instants and sorceries. So every lesson you get is also a trigger for that. And they're also just material. It's also a physical card. The learn mechanic says you can also choose to not get a card and just loot a card away. Discard a card to draw a card. So say you have a lesson that's bad. You could just learn it, put it in your hand, and then next time you learn, you can just discard it and draw a new card. So physical material is also a thing. So weird mechanic, a lot to go over, I know. But good draft card here. As far as when we're taking lessons in draft, I'm not really sure. Because it depends how many learn cards you have. If you don't have any learn cards, these cards are worthless. Worse than worthless because they're just not good Magic cards. But we will see. We'll keep going. Definitely a primarily limited mechanic, I think. But we'll go on and see what else we can do. We can do Instructed. So next one here is Introduction to Annihilation. 5 mana for an exile, a non-land permanent. Thanks for the resub, Gory. So 5 mana exile, non-land permanent. Controller draws a card. So not a great card again. Not a card you put in your deck, but as a tool on your sideboard to grab when you really got to beat that whatever bomb in limited and so on and so forth. Reasonable tool to have. It has exile. Probably not good enough for constructed, but we'll see. We'll see. Yeah, it'll be a fun lesson in Bronze Mythic. Absolutely. Yes, all the school humor is coming. So kind of a narrow one, but again, these lessons are supposed to be narrow. You want to have a narrow card in your sideboard, you go get it and you use it. Introduction to Prophecy is the most simple one, right? This one always plays just 3 mana, scry 2, draw a card. So you play your lesson card, you put this in your hand, and at some point later when you're flooded, you just cast this and draw a card. Similar to a companion effect, where you only use it later on when you have some mana to spare, but it helps to get rid of flooding, which is good too. So this is like the easiest one. And this one could go in a lot of different things, honestly. Say you're just playing a red deck and you have a learn card that does something else. We'll get them to learn cards eventually later, but this one is the most flexible, probably a reasonable limited pick. Because it's just pretty good. Scry 2 and draw is very good limited too. So kind of a cool one here. Probably one of the better ones for limited. Our big one here is Mascot Exhibition. So this is like the one that really stands out as like a really powerful effect. It costs 7 mana. It makes a 2/1 flyer, a 3/2 spirit, and a 4/4 elemental. So again, if we're really flooded, we have one of these on our sideboard, have a couple learn cards, and boom. Now we have an army. We have 4/4, 3/3, and a 2/1 flyer, which is pretty good. Any deck playing constructed learn cards will have this card, at least one of this card on their sideboard. This card is fairly reasonable. Again, this is flood insurance. This is sort of coming out of a sideboard and into your deck. And this is just a bomb in limited, for sure. You turn any learn card and limited this thing. This is a slam dunk first pick in limited. But probably can see constructed play also if the lesson cards are good enough. And it is important to note, yes, when you draft these cards, they're not playables because you're not putting them in your deck. So it's kind of weird because you want to get up to enough playables, but limited these days, there are enough playables where that's usually not a problem, so you should be all right. So those are our colorless lessons. Now we're going to get into our colored lessons. Again, we're going to do all the colors separately as we always do, but I wanted to separate the lessons off because they're so weird and they're just like not Magic cards. They would never go on your deck, so we want to do them all at once. So next up is Academic Probation. 2 mana for a sorcery. Choose one. Choose a non-land card name. Opponents can't cast spells with that chosen name to end of turn. And then, or you can choose target non-land permanent, and until your next turn, that card can't attack, block, or be activated. So really, really, really narrow effect. This effect would not be worth 1 mana if this was a normal spell. But again, it's a lesson. So you can get it from your sideboard, and you can like lock down that key creature for 1 turn. In Constructed, you can like choose Wrath of God for a turn, try and like stop them from playing Wrath for 1 turn. It is very, very, very narrow. But if it's a very, very specific problem you need solved and constructed for only a turn, this could do it. I still think it's too narrow, though. I don't know if this card's worth the sideboard space. And it's not really a limited card either, so pretty sketchy one here in Academic Probation. Next up is Reduced to Memory. White, 1 for a sorcery. Exile non-land permanent. controller gets a 3/2 spirit token. So this is pretty similar to Beast Within. Now, the big difference here is that Beast Within's an instant. And even though you give them a 3/3, part of what makes it good is, you blow them out in combat, you do it end step, you play it at a critical time. As a sorcery, it's much, much worse. It does exile. Of course, a 3/2 is not as bad as a 3/3. And you can always target your own stuff, but now you can't hit your lands to make a creature. Again, this card not even close to good enough. It was just a spell. But as a lesson, as a card in your sideboard, if you just need to answer their 6 mana bomb or whatever, it is reasonable. This card could maybe see play constructed as well as just like an answer of a sideboard. Bargain Bin Skyclave Apparition. Yes, very, very reasonable. So again, very, very hard to parse these because Lesson's such a new, weird mechanic. But definitely a reasonable answer in both constructed and limited if you are learning. Next up is Mercurial Transformation. 2 mana for a sorcery. So end of turn, target non-land permanent loses all abilities and becomes a blue frog. That's a 1/1 or a blue octopus. That's a 4/4. So again, really, really narrow effect. As a sorcery, like Turn to Frog is an instant. That card's kind of reasonable. As a sorcery, there's no trickery here. It just make my 1/1 into a 4/4 or make your 4/4 into a 1/1 for a turn. It's okay. Again, there's no cost to just having this in your sideboard and limited. If you just draft it, it's fine. Not seeing play constructive. This card's way, way too weak, but a reasonable. It's kind of like the double face lands in Zendikar, where like even if they're not great, you just have them and it's a land. You might as well just play it. Same thing with this, where it could just go in your sideboard and maybe it's useful that one turn or whatever. But very, very, very narrow. Probably not a very high pick and definitely not playable constructed. Next up is Teaching of the Archaics. 3 mana for a sorcery. If your opponent has more cards in hand than you, draw 2 cards. If they have 4 more cards than you, you draw 3 cards. Now, this is close to Divination. Now, Divination is like a card that has seen play in constructed at various times. Not always, but it has. Just 3 mana, draw 2 cards. This will only work if your opponent has more cards, but that's usually the time you want a card draw spell anyways. This one's pretty good. This one, I think, has a serious chance in constructed if any learn cards are reasonable, because it's almost strictly better than the colorless one for constructed because you just want to have it when your opponent's you're empty-handed, your opponent's not. Again, it is very narrow. It can be 3 cards if your opponent has a lot more cards than you. Don't know if that's enough to win the game if you're losing, but definitely one of the more powerful lessons. Not sure what deck exactly wants it, but a limited phenomenal card. But in constructed, has a chance. Next up is Confront the Past, a black and X for a sorcery lesson. Return target planeswalker card with mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, or remove twice X loyalty counters from a planeswalker an opponent controls. So this is basically just cast the planeswalker from your graveyard for 1 extra mana, or between 3 and 5 mana to kill your opponent's planeswalker. Again, very, very narrow. This one's also more for constructive and limited because there aren't many planeswalkers in limited. But if you're looking for a way to kill a planeswalker, or you need to recur your own planeswalkers, this is a reasonable lesson. Again, the learn cards need to also be playable here. So there's a lot of steps to this puzzle in constructed because you need to have learn cards you're willing to play. Then you need to have sideboard space. Then you need to have use for the actual lessons. So this card is, very narrow, but it just sort of serves the purpose. It's a bad hero's downfall or reanimate for your planeswalker. If there's a deck that wants this effect, it is playable as a lesson, but that remains to be seen, of course. Up next is Necrotic Fumes, black 1 for a sorcery lesson. Additional cost to cast a spell, exile a creature you control. You exile target creature or planeswalker. So we saw this with Spark Harvest in like War of a Spark. 1 black, sack a creature, kill a planeswalker or a creature. And that card is, iffy playable. It's a little play in Arcanist decks, not great. But this one costs 3 instead of 1, which is a huge, huge difference. But again, kind of like that narrow, if you have a learn card, you got to kill something. There are plenty of token effects in Golgari or Witherbloom. Don't fire me, Wizards. And this is a very reasonable card. This card, could this card see main deck play in draft? Yeah, it's not great, but yeah, if you have a ton of token stuff, but a very, very good lesson in draft because it's a free card again. So constructed, maybe. It's probably one of the better lesson cards for sure. Necrotic Fumes. But it is a pretty high cost and not a phenomenal card. There are typically better options in constructed for killing planeswalkers or creatures. We'll see what we want to learn, Up next is Illuminate History. Red, red, and 2 for a lesson. Discard any number of cards, then draw that many cards. Then, if there are 7 or more cards in your graveyard, make a 3/2. Again, pretty underwhelming. Even though it's a free card, even though it comes from a sideboard, I'm not sure at what point you're like wheeling away your hand and like you want to play 4 mana for this effect. Getting a 3/2 is kind of cool, but it's constricted anyway. It's just not all the sides here aren't really working. In limited, all the rare lessons are pretty good because you can just have this effect in the late game and you can discard some cards, make a 3/2. That's totally fine. I think the best lesson cards are the ones that make tokens. We'll get to those later. So all the rare ones are reasonable and limited. And again, the opportunity cost is so low and limited, but constructed, probably not. Up next is Start from Scratch. This is one of the better ones. 3 mana, lesson, sorcery. Deal 1 to any target or kill an artifact. So again, we have that sort of narrow effect of we can ping a flyer for 1. If this kills, some random 2/1 flyer, that's good. Because again, a lesson is a free card. So it just kind of came out of the aether. So it's like a 0 for 1 in that effect. Or it can shatter things. So the Great Henge, Embercleave. Maybe you've heard of these cards before. Well, this can destroy them. And that's pretty awesome. So your lesson can go out and get a serious card from a sideboard. These sort of more narrow answers seem to fit the bill for lessons really well because that's what you want them for. You don't want to pull some mediocre card from your sideboard that makes a 2/2. You want an answer to a good card your opponent has you don't want to put in your main deck. So Start from Scratch is pretty sweet, honestly. I know it looks like not much, but realistically, lessons don't need to be much. They're bonus cards. Again, think of them like companions. So up next is Basic Conjuration. Green, 1 for a sorcery lesson, of course. Look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card and then put it into your hand. Rest go on the bottom, and you gain 3 life. So reasonable card. Again, in limited, this card's phenomenal. This is just a lesson that draws a card. It'll draw you a good card and gain some life. So phenomenal in limited. Constructed, it's fine. 3 mana to draw a card isn't great, obviously, but you get to gain some life, get your trouble back. Very, very playable lesson in constructed. We'll see what learn cards are going to be playable also. Because again, the equation is playable learn card and playable lesson card and sideboard space. So that's a lot. But this card is definitely playable in constructed for sure. Up next, what's this? What's this? It's our best in show for the lessons. Containment Breach. Green and 2, sorcery lesson. This is a disenchant, kills an artifact or enchantment, and if its mana value is 2 or less, you get a 1/1 pest token as well. So you get some upside too. So this is it. This is like the ultimate sideboard card you can pull into your main deck, flexible card. This can kill Embercleave. This can kill the Great Henge. It can kill Sagas. It can kill a whole bunch of different things. And it does so at a reasonable cost with a little bit of upside as well if you happen to kill something that's small, which is great. Again, these lessons are not world-breaking cards. They're not that exciting when you just look at them at face value because they're not at face value. These cards are free cards that sit in your sideboard like a companion, so you can't look at them like regular Magic cards because they're not. They're not. Dance, buddy. Dance. All right? So definitely best in show here, I think, for lessons. This is the one that you're going to see the most play. It isn't flashy, but it doesn't need to be. You just got to kill Feldar Retreat. Exactly. There's plenty of cards this kills that are cards that are usually very, very hard to kill. The big draw to artifacts and enchantments and constructed is your opponent can't kill them in the main deck usually. And this is the way to do that, which is great. So Containment Breach, our best in show for our lessons here. Again, breaking up lessons into their own section. And let's keep rolling right along here with Elemental Summoning. Now we come to the real meat and potatoes. And I believe these next 5 cards are the most important lesson cards for Limited and are actually going to be pretty high picks. Okay? Elemental Summoning is 5 mana for a 4/4. Again, that's not a good Magic card, but it's free. All right? It's free real estate. You play your lesson card, your learn card, which is already probably fine in and of itself, and you just get this free 4/4 out of nowhere, and now you're playing a spell. It's also a sorcery. It triggers Magecraft. I think every single one of our next 5 cards is going to be a very good pick in Limited, and it'll be very, very important. And you're going to undervalue them at first because they look so mopey, but they are going to be very, very, very good. So we have a 4/4 in Prismari. It's a 4/4 for 4, and it can go in either deck too with a hybrid. So it can be in a red-green deck. It can be in multiple different kinds of decks. You can play this in your what are they? What's the Quandrix deck or whatever? So I think it's a very, very good limited card. In blue-green, in Quandrix, we have Meganxx. This one's a little weaker. It's a 2/2 for 4, a 3/3 for 5. The counters have some effects also, but for the most part, this is a lot worse on rate, like I just have vanilla 4/4 for 4. But still fine, and obviously late in the game, I'm mana flooded. I have 10 lands in play. Oops, here's an 8/8. So that's pretty good. We also have Inkling Summoning, probably the best one in my opinion. I gotta tell you, folks, this one almost hit best in show for me because I think this card's also playable and constructed. There's a two drop in white that learns. There are a number of cards that learns. A 2/1 flyer for 3 is like, it's not that bad, you know, and consider like it kind of draws a card because it's free. You know, the Cloudkin Seer saw a little play constructed. So this card's very, very good limited. Another excellent high pick. We also have Pest Summoning. It's probably one of the worst ones here, but still very good. 2/1 Pest tokens. When they die, you gain a life. There's sacrifice things going on in Golgari. Did I say Golgari? I meant Witherbloom. We're doing that a lot. Over the course of a set review. This one's fine. And the last one, Spirit Summoning. 3 mana for a 3/2 is also just fine. There's plenty of times where we've accidentally played, or not accidentally, but, you know, we had to play this random crappy 3/2 in our deck in draft because you just have to. This fills the curve. Again, none of these cards are going to your main deck. If they go in your main deck, you did something wrong. But as free cards out of your sideboard, these cards are all excellent, excellent, excellent cards. It's going to be very, very high draft picks, I think. They're a lot better than they look. And that's it for the lessons. So again, kind of a weird set review here because we're doing lessons as its own separate thing because they're so weird. But very, very important. I want you all to refer back to this one as we go to our other ones and do the learn cards. Because the learn cards, without the context of this lessons section, is irrelevant. So that's lessons. All my YouTube folks, like, comment, subscribe. Again, I'm breaking this all up into different videos today. We're going to do all the schools separately as well. So look for everything on YouTube. YouTube folks, I love you. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.